This is the Sales Bible Podcast, episode 241, Cadence, A Tale of Fast Business Growth, an interview by author Pete Williams.
Welcome to Sales Babble, the podcast that shares selling secrets for non-sellers. And now your host, Pat Helmers.
Hello, Sales Babblers. This is Pat Helmers. And this week we've had an awful lot of changes here at the Sales Babble studio. In fact, you may have noticed that past week that the website was down. Oh, no. Oh, what a pain that was. And maybe I could explain to you why that was. The theme that I have is kind of going out of date. There's a whole lot of changes going on in WordPress in November. So it's something I've been needing to do for a while, is to refresh the website anyway and to update it. And I did do that, and I finally pulled the trigger this past week, and it is really looking awesome. All the content's the same, but the look is completely new. It's still very easy to get access to the episodes that are coming out this week, all the past episodes, a whole entire back catalog, that's all easily findable. As well as if you got questions about the online course, Selling with Confidence, that we sell, or if you want to chat with me about doing some coaching or consulting, that's easy to find also. And of course, most importantly, the Babble Me button is still there. So if you got a question, don't hesitate to reach it and ask me a question. Moving on, I'm very excited to have Pete Williams on the podcast today. Pete's the author of the book Cadence. It's a tale about fast business growth. And Pete tells a story about a struggling business owner who meets mysterious sensei who slowly reveals the 7 drivers of profit. But I'm going to stop right here. I don't want to spoil the story. Now, the quality of this interview is not as high as I usually like. We were calling all the way to Australia from Chicago. So you might hear a few clips and bips and bleeps and clicks. So don't mind that. So with no further ado, let's get to it. Welcome, Pete. Are you ready to babble?
Absolutely, Pat.
Pete, I got your book in my hand right now. You sent it to me. It's called Cadence, A Tale of Fast Business Growth. You're the author, right?
Absolutely.
Really fun book. Really
fun appreciate
book.
It.
I really enjoyed this book.
I have to say, I'm definitely the author, although I had 2 amazing editors go through this and help me out because, as I'm sure you probably mentioned, it's a story. It's not the traditional business book. And, I'm not a fiction writer by any stretch of the imagination. So I had to get some editors in who could actually sort of tell and help the story become engaging. So I have to shout out to the editors to really help make the book what it became.
Well, it's got a couple things in here that's near and dear to my heart. The first one is bicycling. I've been bicycling forever. Nice. And I still bike a lot. In fact, just this year, a buddy of mine and I did 1 week ride. We did 400 miles down on the New Madrid Fault. It's where there was this big earthquake like in 1805.
Wow.
And we biked all around down there along the Mississippi. I love that. But the second thing that's cool about this book is it talks about business and sales.
Yes.
And it's got a couple characters in there, JJ and Charlie. Maybe you could tell us about these people.
Yeah, sure. Well, the story is based on a true story. When I was in my early 20s, I used to race triathlons quite seriously. And then I made myself a promise that by the time I turned 30, I would do an Ironman triathlon. Now, I got to 29 and a half and went, crap, I got to get this done. And ironically, a bike store opened up across the road from our telecommunications group, our core business back here in Australia. And I'm literally looking out my window at the building across the road now. And so they started the bike store. So I went across there and I actually knew the owner. He was my high school PE teacher by all just sheer coincidence.
Right.
So during the 20 weeks, while I was coached to my Ironman triathlon, I was sort of, helping this guy who opened the bike shop kind of put in some frameworks and some processes to help grow the business. So that was kind of the true story. And the book, Cadence, is effectively that story with a whole bunch of extra engaging conversations and structure and teaching throughout.
It's fun when you read these business stories, and you have this, you read these business books, and most of them are pretty dry, and they've got they spend a chapter or two talking about all the problems out there, then they talk about possible solutions, and then they kind of like dig into them. This book is not that. This book is really tries to tell a tale, but do it in such a clever way.
Oh, well, it started out about as dry as the Australian outback, mate. It literally was. Like the book, when I first did the deal with the publishers, it was going to be that traditional business book teaching the framework that obviously the book still communicates. And I was getting into that. I'm like, this is just not, I wasn't even enjoying it. And I was the one who was actually writing the damn thing. I'm like, if I'm not enjoying this, no one's going to want to read it and pass it on to their friends. So started sort of put that aside, went, okay, how can I make this more enjoyable? And some of my favorite business books, Built to Sell by John Willow,
Yep.
The Carpenter and stuff by John Gordon. There's some great business parables out there that I find I keep going back to, that friends of mine who aren't really sort of, long-term business people who are just starting out, they prefer to read those books because it's not the dry, boring business books. And I also think that a lot of traditional business books, the message can be told in a very long blog post, and they just basically turn into a book and just pad it out for an extra 300 pages, and it's just a waste of everyone's time. So when I sort of pivoted this story and went, okay, how can I tell this in a different way? I thought about that bike stop and then went, all right, cool, let's tell that story. And it seems to have resonated. Like it's been winning awards, it's getting some great feedback, and people are saying it's a business book for people who don't read business books, and that's really exciting for me because it's kind of really nice to hear those things. And hopefully at the end of the day, the lessons and the framework that is designed to come across in the book actually gets read more, gets implemented, gets absorbed more in a story. Because that's kind of, how we all generally learn. As salespeople, we know that, telling stories and communicating to your prospects and your suspects in, case studies and examples and that sort of stuff builds a much stronger bond than kind of just talking facts and figures about your products and services. So taking that same sort of, methodology from sales and applying it to the actual book itself has sort of seemed to pay off.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about JJ, who's the bike store owner character, and Charlie, who is his student.
Yeah.
Wants to, I think he's trying out for an Ironman triathlon, correct?
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely.
Not trying out, actually attempting one.
Training for it. Absolutely. So yeah, JJ, this story goes, is a high school PE teacher and, opens up this bike shop, which is his long life dream to sort of, merge his passion for, entrepreneurial sort of stuff and cycling and triathlons. Opens up this bike store and then begins to struggle like a lot of business owners. I think, a lot of business owners, even a lot of sales professionals to a certain extent, they are really, really good at their tools. If you look at, business owners, they might have done an apprenticeship and they're really great at what they actually do. So they decide to open a business around it. Or, we see this a lot, in business and in our staff and our sales teams and other salespeople who have come and gone through our doors over the 15 years of our business, is that salespeople, a lot of them are really, really good on the tools. They're really good at doing the thing they do. So then they sort of go, well, hang on, I want to earn more money. And they go into sales because sales, generally has, a no ceiling limit in terms of what you can earn. Yet the skill sets are very, very different. Just because you're actually passionate about the product or you're really good at the product doesn't mean you're actually good at communicating it and selling it or running the business around it. And that was kind of the scenario and the case for this character, JJ, is that he was a great athlete. He was knows about cycling in and out, but he opens up this business and just doesn't know how to run a business because it's a different skill set. So during that 20 weeks, while Charlie, who is this successful business owner, is training and learning about triathlons, they have a series of conversations around, what it means to run a business. What are the real drivers of profit in a business? How do you focus your attention to grow the business in the right areas without sort of, going all over the shop and being a bit scattered in your approach? And that's kind of the underlying tone of the book. And then it teaches the frameworks and the methodologies that we've had success to so far in our companies here in Australia.
Something that I like in the book, and the book's kind of like framed around the structure of the 7 levers. Isn't that right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I don't know if we have time to go through all 7. Maybe you can list them off, and I'd like to maybe dig into a couple that have something specifically to do with sales professionals.
Absolutely. I think this is, it's a good point. And, the book's there to be bought and read if you want to sort of, get a bit more information. Yet, it's about teaching, so I don't really care how in depth you want to go. Fundamentally, what we figured out in our business, there was no aha moment where we sat down and, the skies parted and this wisdom came down. It was over a long period of time learning and growing and falling over and then getting back up again, that in any business, whether you are a retail bike store, you're a landscape gardener, you're an IT company, whatever you might be, there's only really 7 things that drive profit in a business, no matter what you are. And once you understand that these are the 7 drivers of profit, that's where you focus your time and attention as a business. And as salespeople, you absolutely affect a new number of these. So to reel them off really quickly, to give some context, it's suspects, prospects, conversions, average item price, average items per sale, transactions per customer, and your margins. They're your 7 things. It's really the customer journey almost. They go through those sort of decision processes all the way through to then, end up leaving profit in the business's bottom line. And the really cool part about that is those 7 things are very clear, maybe not that new to a lot of people. Yet the real kicker in the book is that if you increase each of those 7 areas by only 10%, you have a 10% win in each of those areas, the compounding effect is you actually double the bottom line of the business and the profit, 2x's. And that's the real power of this framework. Yet you're right. There are a number of things in there that salespeople have a very direct ownership, influence, and effect on.
You should repeat that one more time. If you can increase the bottom line of these, you can grow your business how much?
2x. So literally 200%. So, I think a lot of business owners, even sales managers, absolutely, they're generally in charge of, a big chunk of the business's profit, maybe not the margins, but everything that leads up to it really, is that most people, it's always about, what was the Glenn Ross movie saying? Give me the good leads. I need the good leads.
I want the good leads. Coffee's for closers.
Yeah, exactly. It's all about doubling something. If I want to, increase the business, I've got to get more leads. People are only thinking at the top of the funnel. That's where the problem lies. But realistically, if you're in the marketing team or in the sales team doing inside sales, outside sales, whatever you're doing, knocking on doors, realistically, if you do look at it, doubling the amount of new people coming into the business, doubling your suspects effectively is really, really hard. That's not easy to do. Yet if we say, okay, let's take a moment and go, we're just going to increase our suspects by 10%. We're going to go from 1,000 new people walking into our retail store a day to 1,100, or whatever that figure might be, 100 to 110. We're going to increase our conversion rate from 25% to 27.5%, just a 10% win. We're going to increase our average items per sale from 1.2 to 1.31. We're not trying to double anything. We're just going for small, incremental, bite-sized, achievable 10% wins, and let actual mathematics do its work, which effectively is the compounding result of 7 small 10%.
Right.
Compounding, yeah. 7 small 10% wins actually results in a 2x bottom line change. And this gives so many business owners, so many sales managers a framework, a blueprint, and also the freedom to actually achieve results. Because I think everyone, every salesperson, every sales professional, every business owner has felt the handcuffs almost of trying to double your leads, or, I need to get 50,000 new website visitors. I need to get 3,000 new email addresses. I need to make 50 more cold calls today, whatever it might be. Like, some of that stuff is really, really hard to do and demoralizing very, very quickly. Yet when you sort of look at this actual framework that really drives profit, it's so freeing. And that, hey, I only need to get a 10% win. I only need to increase by 10%. And it gives a lot more freedom to actually take action and then achieve and build momentum.
How do you distinguish suspects from leads?
Good question. And I think this is something that so many businesses don't do properly.
I get asked this all the time. That's why I asked
a lead's
it.
a lead. A lead's a lead.
Pat,
the way
why?
I differentiate
How do you do that?
Yeah.
I get this asked all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. So the way I define it is you have suspects and prospects. And generally the definition of lead is broken up into 2 sections, suspects and leads. Let me use an analogy of a retail store. When I was in university, I worked at Athlete's Foot, the shoe store chain.
Yep.
And we got taught something very, very important. And that is the way you talk to someone when they walk into the store is very, very different once they sit down and trying on a pair of shoes. And the whole methodology, Athlete's Foot had this thing called the greet and seat rules about greeting someone and getting them to sit down. They were not trying to sell every person who walked in the door a pair of shoes. What they were trying to do is get that person's bum on a seat to try on a pair of shoes. And once they're trying on a pair of shoes, then you try and sell them. So suspects are the people who walk into the retail store. Once they sit down and try on a pair of shoes, then they're a prospect. And then once they actually open up their wallet and purchase from you, then they're a customer. And I think so many businesses don't take the time to differentiate that micro commitment. What is it in your business that turns someone from a tire kicker, a looky-loo, a suspect, into a qualified prospect? In our telco business, it's when someone gets a quote, or when someone arranges a pre-sale site inspection, when one of our technicians can go to their offices and look around. So you have that. In online world, it might be someone who comes to your website, but once they actually take up your free trial of your software program, that's a suspect is a website visitor. Once they're actually taking up your free trial, they're a prospect. Every business, no matter what you do, there is that micro commitment step when someone puts up their hand and says, yes, I'm willing to be sold to. I am qualified. You can now actually pay me the respect and the attention I deserve. And I think for sales managers, if you can have a session with your team and get really, really clear on what that micro commitment is, and then be able to separate suspects from prospects, that will make a massive difference in how you communicate, how you target, how you report, how you reward your team members. We've done that exceptionally well so far in our business, in that, we know that what we're trying, our first sale to a suspect is not the actual purchase. It's getting a site inspection or getting a
Yeah,
quote.
I think this is a real critical KPI, key performance indicator.
Absolutely.
Is that when it becomes clear in your mind that they are qualified to purchase your product, they've said something that says, we are shopping for this, or we have a need for this. Because you could make an argument, everybody's got to buy shoes. Everybody has to wear shoes. But do they need to wear these high-end athletic shoes? I know my wife buys shoes, and she's very, very picky which shoes she buys. Is she, are these people qualified or are they not? And that's how you see that.
And it's also too, everyone needs to buy shoes, but they need to buy them today. And do they need to buy them from you?
Right.
So a lot of those, the conversations you have with suspects is as much about trying to get them to sit down and try on a pair of shoes or get the quote or whatever it is that happens to define a prospect, the next step for you in your business, is it's as much about trying to get them to take that step, pardon the pun, shoes, steps. I love a bad pun. But it's as much of that as it is about getting them to disqualify themselves and say, you're not right, because, the amount of resources it takes to get someone to that next phase, to get them across to that prospect phase, and the effort it takes to get a prospect to convert into a customer, you want to minimize that distraction and that waste as much as possible. So doing things to actually minimize and disqualify people is as important in that suspect phase as it is in the actual overall phase.
I think this is a really important thing to note. Yeah. You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right.
And that's something that we try and really reinforce in everything we do, is that that's the first phase, is it really is going, okay, identifying in your business, what are the suspects? How do you define a suspect? What's that micro commitment that takes them into a prospect? And what is currently happening to get them to become a customer? And, what is it? Let me give you an example in our telco. So suspects for us are people who come to our website. We do all our lead gen through direct response marketing, generally online, and it's about getting people to come to a website. And then once they're on their website, we get them to actually pick up the phone and speak to us. So basically, getting on the phone, chatting to our salespeople is effectively the suspect level for us. How many people actually interact with our business in an engaging way? That's the suspects. Then it's once our salespeople can get them to do one or two things. As I said before, either get a quote for a phone system solution or book a pre-sale site inspection where our technician can go to site and do a bit more of an assessment. That is the step they take between a suspect to become a prospect. If someone's willing to spend half an hour on the phone and talk to our sales guys and get really clear on their needs and their desires and their wants, or spend half an hour with one of our technicians in their office walking around, talking about their solution, that is the commitment, the micro commitment we need to make from a suspect to a prospect. So that's our prospects.
So let's talk about conversions.
Yeah. Yep.
The percent of prospects who actually buy and become customers. I'm reading that directly out of the book.
Spot on. There you go. Exactly right. And for us, it's okay. So once they've got that quote, the quote and the proposal, and obviously the sales conversations around that, are the things that then drive that conversion. So, the way we can get a 10% boost in our conversions is, well, let's split test and work on our proposals. How do we put more social proof in our proposals? How do we make it easier to read? How do we make it clearer? Pricing. Right. It's potentially part of a conversion argument. You've got what sales training you're doing for your sales team. There's conversion training and then there's prospect training. The conversation to get people to actually, take the site inspection, take the proposal is a different skill set and a different conversation you actually have to getting someone to actually put their pen on ink on the proposal and on the quote. And I think from a sales manager's perspective, having those clear conversations and those clear training sessions on those two elements is really, really important. But conversions is a massive step of taking those prospects to buyers.
There's a bunch of other things. There's a bunch of levers that you have that are interesting, like the average item per price, slowly bumping up the price, number of items per sale. So instead of walking out the door with one, maybe they walk out with two things.
It's buying a pair of shoes and a pair of socks.
And then you got transactions per customer. What is that?
That's about getting people to come back and buy from you again. What systems do you as a sales team and as a business have in place to encourage people to come back and purchase from you again?
Right.
What are you doing in a systemated, automated way? It could be as simple as when you convert a customer, you actually put something in your diary to give them a call 6 months later. It can be as simple as that. It can be as creative as getting an email sequence in place, using MailChimp or ActiveCampaign or one of those email tools that when someone buys from you, you put them in an email sequence that sends them automatic, email reminders from your sales team at 30 days, 90 days, 120 days going, "Hey, Joe, hope everything's going well. Just going through my desk and found your information. Thought I'd just touch base and see how product Y is treating your business. Love to chat and just see how it's going. If there's anything else we can help you with your business." Like having some of those sort of systems automated and systemized, because if you just rely on, good customer experience to drive those people back into your business and back into your store or back onto the phone to your salespeople, that ain't going to happen. Everyone's so busy and distracted. Good customer experience is not enough to get people to actually react and come back. Good customer experience is just the expectation. So you need to be proactive in systems and automation to drive that transactions per customer, getting people to come back. Everyone on this listening to this, I'm sure knows that, it's X amount times easier to sell to an existing customer than a new one. It's cliche, but it's true. But the question then comes down to, what are you actually doing right now in your business to encourage, drive, promote those repeat buyers? And we're going to try and improve it by 10%. We're not going to try and miraculously create some brand new massive campaign. We're just going to look at what we're currently doing and improve it by 10%. And you might find that, 5 people in your sales team don't even do anything. They don't check their calendars. They don't put those calendar notes in, but the other half do. Great. Bang. There's your 10% win. Get everyone to just do a calendar entry at 60 days. It can be as simple as that. I've
absolutely. I just had a conversation with a guy an hour ago who said that's the number one problem that he has is trying to stay on task. That he's got a lot of data in Salesforce, and it tells him he should be updating these people, but it's hard. That's all in the grass. It's all in the weeds. It's hard to be able to keep organized to step up from that. What are the real important things that I need to do to have significant impact on my business?
Yeah. And I think just taking the time to go, okay, I'm going to step back, one afternoon with my sales leaders, with my marketing leaders, whoever it might be, and just identify what are those 7 levers in your business? What are you currently doing to differentiate a suspect from a prospect? What are you currently doing right now to get a conversion? What does your proposals look like? What are you currently doing right now to get repeat transactions from those customers? And all you need to do is basically identify it. And I would guarantee that you will find some glaring holes in the bathtub. I was talking to someone recently who bought the book, and they were reading it, and they made a $20,000 change to their margins within 2 hours of putting the book down. They went and went, okay, well, where are all my costs? And they just spent the time to look through their margins, what were the margins of the business and where the costs were, and found $20,000 savings in like 2 hours. Like that's straight to their bottom line back pocket.
So
and there's been
what's
other
the ROI
examples.
on that? What's the book cost?
Yeah, $16, I think, $20, something less than that. It's ridiculous. But, we've done this in our business. Like, this is the thing, is like, I'm not sitting here at an ivory tower saying we're brilliant. The framework's bigger than me. That's the framework. We've had times where we've, for a public holiday, we've paused some AdWords campaigns, and we came back after public holiday and got to turn them back on for like 6 weeks. And it wasn't until we sat down and went, well, hang on, let's compare our numbers. What's currently happening in this lever? We realized that we'd turned something off and that was affecting our suspects. There's stories where people have forgot their credit card expired and their email autoresponder sequence, which they thought was going out, driving repeat transactions, hadn't sent a damn email for 90 days. And I'm sure in every business, if you take the time to sit down and identify the 7 levers, you will find 10% wins, not by being creative, just by being diligent and going, why is that not working? Oh, I forgot my staff stopped asking, would you like fries with that?
I just had this problem myself. My pop-up box stopped working.
Yep.
I don't know why.
Yeah.
And I noticed, how come people aren't signing up like at the same level that they used to? I noticed that for a couple of weeks, and finally I realized, oh my goodness, it got broke. And I had to turn it back on.
How long did it take to fix?
Actually, it took longer than I thought. It took about a day.
But
yeah.
Even if it's a day, I'm sure you're saying a day, but it wouldn't have been 8 hours of you just sitting in a computer screen trying to figure it out.
It was fiddling here and fiddling there.
Yeah, so it might have been a couple of hours. But this is the thing, is like, how many listeners that's been happening to for a while, and they think it's still working, but they haven't looked at their website. And I'm guessing that would probably have been a 10% boost for you from where it was at. By turning that back on, you would have got a 10% boost in suspects.
Yes,
so that's a very simple example of a couple of hours of your time got a 10% boost. Now, you could argue that, well, it wasn't really a boost because it should have been on in the first place. But I would make the argument is right now is right now. What's happening today is happening today. If it's not working today, right now you're not successful in that area, and you're going to get a 10% boost from where you are momentarily by making that change. And every business I've ever seen implement this has had at least one, if not more, 10% wins just by taking the time of identifying it. And so many businesses can double their profit just by just looking at where their current expectations are actually falling down. Not trying to be creative, just looking about, oh crap, I forgot that, the sales guys aren't asking, would you like fries with that? I forgot that our e-commerce stores upsell functionality stopped working. I forgot that our pop-up isn't getting inquiries. I forgot that our system in Salesforce that's meant to remind salespeople to call all our prospects isn't happening. There's plenty of examples of Salesforce breaking where, your sales team aren't getting notified about certain things. And didn't know about that. Moving your proposals from PDFs to something like Proposify Online, so your sales team get notified as soon as someone opens a proposal. Simple, that can be done. Moving your proposals from that to that can take less than a day. Yet you start getting more triggers to, give you more data that your sales team can work off. Like, there's some very simple things that you can do that take 1 hour, 2 hours, 8 hours, even 2 days is not much to get a 10% boost in your conversion rate.
Okay, the name of the book is Cadence, A Tale of Fast Business Growth by Pete Williams. Pete, where can people find this book? Can they, I assume, Amazon?
Yeah, absolutely. The usual, where all good books are sold. Yeah, absolutely. Barnes & Noble, Amazon, anywhere you want to get a book, it's going to be all over the place, or it is already over the place. Cadencebook.com if you want to hear more information and download a sample chapter or watch some of the little video trailers and stuff like that.
Is that where people can find you?
Yeah, absolutely. Cadencebook.com is probably the best place.
If you could give our listeners one piece of advice they could go and take action on this week, what would that be, Pete?
I think it really is. Whether you buy the book, whether you listen to the podcast or other interviews I've done, is just take the time and think about what those 7 areas are for your business. Just identify it. You'll get some insights just from that without having to buy a book or invest in any sort of courses or anything like that. Just take the time to identify. Maybe it simply is just identify the difference between a suspect and a prospect for your sales team. Prospect or qualified lead, and have that conversation with your sales team and see what comes out of that. And if you get some insights, then go and invest $20 in Cadence and thank me that way.
All right. Well,
Yep.
thank you very much, Pete. Again, I really appreciate you visiting us here in Sales Babble. This has been a lot of fun.
Awesome, man. Well, no, again, thank you so much for having me on. Glad you enjoyed the book and appreciate the support, mate, because that's how these things grow, is just people talking about it. So thank you so much.
As I said at the top of the show, these are two of my favorite topics, business and cycling. I could talk about these things all day long. And I really love the 7 drivers of profit that he mentioned: suspects, prospects, conversion, average item price, average items per sale, transactions per customer, and then lastly, the margins. If you focus on each of these with an improvement of 10%, you can double your business. Wouldn't that be a great start? Think what could happen if you did even more. I love it, love it, love it. So to find the links to Pete and his book Cadence, you can go to the show notes at www.salesbabble.com/240. And if you really enjoyed this podcast, I would really appreciate it if you could give us a 5-star review on the podcast player that you're listening to right now. And if you could forward this episode to a friend who you think might enjoy it, that would be awesome too. Who knows? They may be babblers too. Well, that's all I got for this week. Until next, take care and have a highly successful and profitable selling day.
Thank you for listening to the Sales Babble podcast. Find us at www.salesbabble.com.